Good afternoon. I'm going to call to order this public hearing, the Albany County Redistricting Commission and the Majority Minority District Redistricting Subcommittee. I'm Larry Volk, Chairman of the Commission. I would like to briefly let everyone know what we're going to do today. As you know, the Commission has publicly released a revised final map of all 39 county legislative districts. That map includes and is based on the 7 majority-minority districts in the revised map of the Majority-Minority District Redistricting Subcommittee. After the roll call of the Commission and Subcommittee, Patricia Sibilia will briefly describe our mapping process, and Marie Allen Campbell, Chair of the Subcommittee, will provide a general overview of the census data used in our mapping process. Following that, we will hear from any of you who want to provide statements at this public hearing. For the record, I'm going to call the roll of the Commission. The other members of the Commission are Tom Klingen.
I am here.
Warren Hamilton.
I am here.
Leif Hartmark. Guess Leif's not here. Mark McCumber. I'm here. Joan Ramsey.
Present.
Julia Reeb.
Here.
Patricia Sibilia.
I am here.
And Sita Subaram.
Here.
We are also joined today by Nick Glass, an intern working with the Commission, and Marissa Zanfordino of New York Law School, counsel to the Commission and the Subcommittee. Marie?
Hi, good evening. Welcome to our 7th public hearing. I'm going to do a quick roll call for the Majority Minority Redistricting Subcommittee. I am Marie Allen Campbell again. Here with me is Donna Bullock. Here. Kashana Owens Cody. Adrian Kissy. Joining us virtually is Dominic Mazza.
Here.
And Larry Molden. Larry. And on an excused absence, we have Constance Graves. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Good evening, everyone. My name is, as you already heard, Patricia Sibilia, and I'm one of the commissioners with the Albany County Redistricting Commission, otherwise known as the ACRC. And I am here to talk about the mapping process we went through tonight. As you most likely know, the 2020 census count is the primary driver of the redistricting process. And to be clear, as per law, the final census numbers get adjusted by incarcerated individuals being placed in their former home addresses. This adjusted count is 316,079 individuals for all of Albany County. The total population of the county, when divided evenly between the 39 districts, results in the ideal population being 8,105 residents per district. New York State legal requirements are that the difference in population between the most and the least populous district shall not exceed 5% of that mean average population of all the districts, so of that 8,105. So in order to stay as close to the mean as possible, the population of a district can only vary within a range of plus or minus 2.5%. So that's between roughly 7,900 and 8,300 people per district. For reference, Local Law 8, Albany County's Local Law 8 for 2019 also includes language about minimizing population variance, but the amount of variation in that population count is not nearly as restrictive as the New York State law we adhere to. To balance the population between the districts, commissioners must move census blocks, which can largely vary in size based on the density of the population in an area. For Albany County, that variation goes from 0, because it's a commercial or recreational area, to 3,294, which is the highest populated census block in Albany County. So that's really dense areas. That difference of 2.5% that we have to stay inside of is really only just a little over 202 people. And some census blocks are so much larger than that, which really creates a challenge when trying to fine tune the lines in the mapping process, since we cannot split a census block. So as we were going through and trying to balance everything, it really depended on the census blocks around the borders that made a difference. So the results of the census showed there was a major shift of the population from the south and the west of the county to the northeast. We had some extreme examples when we started with the current district with the updated population counts. So the current District 37 in the southeast corner had a population of 7,276, which gave it a deviation of minus 10.23% from that ideal. So that's a problem. So in that case, we needed to add census blocks to bring it up within the deviation. That means we have to make the district larger in geography than it currently is. On the other end of the spectrum, current District 18 in the northeast corner had a population of 9,630, which put it 18.82% over that average. It needed to be reconfigured to subtract census blocks to remove at least 1,300 people and to keep it within the deviation. This means that the district had to get smaller than it currently is. Both the ACRC and the MMD commissions carefully considered all the input we received when drawing our maps. But to be clear, we had to adhere to what the laws outline, including the priority given to certain factors in them. So while Albany County Local Law 8 for 2019 guided a good portion of our work, it was superseded by the New York State law that was passed in October 2021, which clearly outlines the criteria, but also puts them in a priority order that we needed to follow. So as mentioned previously, the #1 priority is to make the districts as equal in size as possible, with the variation of counts between them being within that 5%. We moved the census blocks between the districts to achieve this result while also giving consideration to the other criteria while we were doing so. The second priority, so the first being the count and the size, the second priority that the state law gives is that districts shall not be drawn with the intent or result of denying or abridging the equal opportunity of racial or language minority groups to participate in the political process or to diminish their ability to elect representatives of their choice. So that's the second priority. Local Law 8 for 2019 specifically addressed this by creating the MMD subcommittee. We give kudos to the MMD who worked tirelessly on this very difficult task in coordination with their hired consultants. The ACRC accepted the MMD plan unanimously, and then we adjusted the remaining districts around their plan. The third and fourth priorities outlined in the state law are contiguity, and compactness in that order. In drafting our plans, we visually reviewed our drafts, and several times we explored changing the district border where we felt they were not as compact as we'd like them to be, and we adjusted them where we could based on census block sizes to better adhere to this criteria. We also used the Maptitude software's analytics to run the numbers on our draft maps to ensure we were meeting these priorities. The last priority outlined in the state law combines several different factors into one enumerated fifth priority. Those are political data, municipal boundaries, and communities of interest. And I'll walk you through each of these. So the first is that districts shall not be drawn to discourage competition or for the purpose of favoring or disfavoring incumbents or other particular candidates or political parties. This is also reinforced in the language in Albany County's Local Law 8, where it says candidate and party registration were excluded from all phases of the mapping process. And we did that except where it was used by the MMD to test the maps for compliance with their goals by using the party voting history and participation. Also included in this fifth priority is the maintenance of cores of existing districts and of pre-existing political subdivisions, including cities, villages, and towns. We seriously took this into consideration in our deliberations, and to the extent we could without violating higher priorities, we made adjustments to achieve this. Further on municipal boundaries, the fifth New York State criteria also includes what some have called the 40% rule, which is that to the extent practicable, no villages or cities or towns except those having more than 40% of the full ratio for each district shall be divided. So they want to ensure that the small ones stay intact. For Albany County, 40% of that 8,105 is a municipality that has less than 3,243 people. There are 7 such municipalities in Albany County that fall within that criteria. The town of Bern, the town and village of Green Island, the town of Knox, the town of Rensselaerville, the town of Westerlo, the village of Altamont, and the village of Voorheesville. In each of these municipalities, we were able to keep them intact in the districts drawn. The last criteria in that fifth priority, the New York State law speaks to keeping intact communities of interest where possible, which implies without violating any of those 4 higher priorities. A community of interest is defined as a group that shares a common interest. This can vary greatly by who is defining it. For parents of school-aged children, it may be the school district that defines their community. The parents and students, because they are parents and students that they regularly interact with. For others, it may be defined by a residential community or neighborhood, or a neighborhood association, as we've heard. So these are those they see regularly as those they go about in their daily business is how you define a community of interest. It can also be defined by racial, ethnic, or economic groups. Because the definition can vary by perspective, there is no one right answer when we talk about communities of interest for the commission to use in the mapping process. Instead, we endeavored to take as many as possible into consideration when drawing the district lines. As we drew the boundaries for each district, we consistently considered the 4 major priority requirements. We also considered carefully all the testimony received and used our varied knowledge of the different parts of the county. And we did further research where needed in particular border areas so we could determine what we felt were the best district boundaries. We will again review and consider any input received from the hearing. But please do understand, we are hearing you, but there are times when the maps we produce don't seem to incorporate the input received, but it may well be because we had to adhere to those higher priority factors that did not allow us to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Marie?
Hello again. I'm just gonna give you a high-level overview of the data that we used. So we used the state-adjusted population data just to give you a sense of some of the observations from that data. It is clear that Albany County has become substantially more diverse. And almost all of the districts with few exceptions, the Black, Hispanic, and Asian populations have increased. Also, the white population has decreased in most of the districts. And in fact, the white population in Albany County fell by approximately 9%. While diverse populations exist within all of the municipalities, the most diverse areas of Albany County include the city of Albany, Manans, and Ward of Elite. This is followed respectively by Green Island, Colony, Guilderland, Cohoes, and Ravenna. The largest increase in diversity occurred in District 7, which includes the neighborhoods of Beverwick, Pine Hills, and Washington Square. In this district, the non-Hispanic white population decreased by approximately more than 20%. Not, Black population increased by approximately 11%, Hispanic increased 5%, and the Asian population increased 1%. The non-Hispanic Black populations in the current majority minority districts have decreased an average of 4%, with the highest decreases occurring in District 1, 2, and 6. In the last court decision in 2015, relative to redistricting in Albany County, it was determined that racial polarization existed. Our work with consultants indicates that racially polarized voting still exists. In racially polarized areas, majority minority districts afford minorities the best opportunity to elect representatives of their choosing. In order to ensure equality of population in current MMD areas and to increase minority representation in the number of MMDs, it was necessary to reconfigure the MMDs and districts surrounding the MMDs. This was done consistent with the higher priority to ensure the rights of minorities are not denied or abridged. So that's just a real high-level overview of data that we were working with. And I'll turn it back over to Larry.
Thank you, Marie. We have received written comments on the map with regard to this public hearing regarding Manans, Waterville, State University campus, and Albany's Washington Park, Hudson Park, Center Square, and Park South neighborhoods. Legislator William Clay has asked to speak. Is Legislator Clay online? Okay. Legislator Lynn Lakakis has also asked to speak. Is she here? Would you like to testify?
Here.
There's one up there, Lynn. You can go up there on top of the dais there. That mic. Yeah, yep. That's yours, yeah. Oh, that's fine.
Thank you very much. It's good to have a seat at the table. I'm Lynn Lakakis. I represent the 8th District, which is currently the Delaware Area Neighborhood Association, the Helderberg Neighborhood Association, the Woodlawn Neighborhood Association, and a little bit of the other one, Lower Whitehall Neighborhood Association. And when I first, got this job, I said to myself, like, why? Like, why does this district shape the way it is? Why is it not just one neighborhood? And I still don't really know the answer to that. But as I've been watching your process all the way through, what I've noticed is that a lot of people have mentioned about the neighborhoods being a natural determinant of how people feel about where they live. In Albany, in the city, I can only speak to the city. I've lived in the city for over 40 years. It's about pride of place. After you say you live in Albany, they say what neighborhood you live in, and you say Buckingham Pond, or you say Upper Western, or you say Delaware, or something like that. And it's not about what the census thinks. It's really about what the people think. So I noticed in this last version I've been watching, sometimes in person, sometimes later. There's still 3 or 4 neighborhoods that seem a little chopped up to me, like the Lark Street neighborhood, and you have had a couple of testimonies where people have asked to be separating that one. The Buckingham Pond one still looks a little separated by like 2 or 3 streets just dangling out the end. And in the Delaware neighborhood, which is predominantly where I live, I would say your latest version of it, where the section that I am, it couldn't be less compact, than it is right now. It's about a 45-minute walk downhill, to the other end of where it's, which is part of, in most of our experiences, part of the South End. And I don't necessarily care how it ends. I just want to make sure that it's right for everybody, that lives there. It's an immigrant resettlement area in Delaware Avenue. So there's a lot of different people there, a great diversity. It's a business district, a strong business district, and there's Lincoln Pharmacy on one end, and it goes down to Nicole's and the Cheese Traveler and all the way to the edge of the city. And I just would like you to consider that that's an important strengthening tool for keeping our neighborhood strong and keeping our, and I would say if, the edge of the city in the last drawing, it kind of just dangles off there. There's a half a Maryline. A couple of constituents have asked me to ask you to reconsider that one little strip of Maryline is just hanging there before you hit the thruway. And, or just maybe after the thruway. And then there's there's 6 or 7 other little streets, Albion and Golder and Norman Skill. And they have asked also to consider that if you dump those, if you restructure those in with Delmar, then it really will detract from the feeling that they are in the city of Albany. That's their zip code, that's their address, that's their conscience. So I think that's all that I really wanted to say. Please consider, taking another look at the neighborhoods and how that they fall in. And I appreciate your time, and I know this has been a Herculean task, and it can't be fun, and I applaud your efforts so far. Thank you.
Do any of the commissioners or subcommittee members have any questions for them? Thank you very much. Richard Conti had asked to speak. Is Mr. Conti online?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Richard Conti. I currently reside at 151 Chestnut Street in the city of Albany, which is currently in the 5th County Legislative District. I'm also a former member of the Albany Common Council representing the 6th Ward. My comments tonight are specifically related to the impact of the proposed map on the current 5th Legislative District. And the impacted neighborhoods. And I have submitted written comments both for your previous hearing, and I've submitted my written testimony for tonight as well. So as a 24-year member of the Common Council prior to retiring at the end of 2021, I did experience 2 Common Council reapportionment processes after the 2000 and 2000 U.S. Census findings. In each case, the commission overseeing the reapportionment of the Common Council in those years took into consideration the then existing ward lines and neighborhood boundaries and adopting a final plan in accordance with the required standards of population and demographics, et cetera. That process provided a level of continuity in representation rather than upending ward lines in a way that disrupted established relationships. As a result of the current lines that the council has, the Common Council that was elected in 2021 is actually the most diverse in the history of the city of Albany. And I think more diverse than the city legislative delegation on the county legislature, in fact. The revised map that's the subject of this hearing really shatters the current 5th County Legislative District, splitting the Center Square, Hudson Park, Park South, and Washington Park neighborhoods into 4 new legislative districts, or parts of 4 new legislative districts. In one case, in fact, the Hudson Park neighborhood is cut off from the other areas of its newly proposed district by the Empire State Plaza, which creates, in effect, a concrete barrier to the rest of the neighborhoods within that proposed district. And that just doesn't make sense. The Empire State Plaza is often a barrier, a wall that separates neighborhoods. In this case, the way this plan is drawn, that's what it's doing with the Hudson Park neighborhood. These 4 neighborhoods on both the county and city levels have traditionally shared the same unit of representation, representing similar communities of interest. And they're bound together by the Lark Street as a uniting mixed-use commercial corridor and have a strong working relationship with each other. Under the current proposal, the Lark Street corridor that forms the Lark Street Business Improvement District, or the BID, is split into 3 separate districts. The Lark Street bid, in fact, is the only one of the 3 city bids in the city of Albany that is wholly contained within one city ward or county legislative district. This has provided a level of cohesion in representation with city and county government that benefits its membership. The proposed plan under discussion tonight shatters that cohesion and will be harmful to the small, locally owned businesses that form the corridor. Overall, the fact that the county and city lines are fairly coterminous, at least in the case of the 5th Legislative District and the 6th Ward, has enhanced the working relationships between neighborhoods and legislative representations. The proposed county legislative map creates an unnecessary division that really undercuts the working relationships and will cause confusion among residents as far as representation is concerned, and possibly
It's powering out. Oh no, he's going. Not yet. He's going though.
We,
Check. See if there's a. Okay.
Mr. Conti appears to have been knocked offline. He comes back on, we will ask him to continue. In the meantime, legislator Allison McLean Lane has asked to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I truly appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I have these earbuds in, so little new technology. So thank you very much again for allowing me this opportunity. As you know, I've been a very vocal proponent for the Village of Manans. It is the place that I reside, it is the community I love, and it's a community that unfortunately, with the proposed map, is being divided pretty significantly. So there are sort of three parts to what I want to say. I will try and make it as succinct as possible because I can be verbose. One, putting the east side of Van Rensselaer Boulevard, the north to 378, to the river, plus engaging that with the 3rd legislative district into an MMD. I will reiterate what I've said before. Not only are you running a very, very high risk of having an individual who is not a person of color represent that district, you're also engaging two areas that, though are very close to each other and share a border, have very different needs. The Village of Manans section is looking on their commercial corridor to have a grocery store, which has been recognized by the Comprehensive Plan Survey as being the #1 thing that they need, in addition to a bank and a pharmacy. You cross the border immediately, you go from home ownership into apartments. Yes, we have apartment complexes, but they are very different from the homes that have been divided into apartments in the North Albany area. Additionally, I want to give you an example why. It is something I did not want to say, but unfortunately it does need to be said. And I think you can extrapolate from what I am saying as to the situation. When George Floyd was murdered, there were multiple very peaceful protests around the entire state. Something I'm very proud that happened here right in Albany County, because so many people were upset, including my own family. What did disappoint me, unfortunately, is local leadership in the Village of Manans, City of Watervliet, and the village town of Green Island decided to declare a state of emergency, institute curfews, preventing people from coming from Troy, where the protest was located. And it's upsetting, to say the least. But I think that can tell you a little bit about how you are running a risk of having a person who is not a person of color in that district being the head of an MMD, which is disturbing. The current legislator for the 3rd legislative district, who I am very close with, that I work with constantly, I probably speak to her three times a week, She came across and drove through, you know, and said, this is home ownership or complexes. This is not, you know, these apartments start at $1,800 a month for one bedroom. And it's a very different situation. And that is one part of what I want to say. Something I did not want to have to say. Additionally, the 14th legislative district, of which I currently represent, would be a part in the city of Albany, a part the hamlet of Loudonville, Chatham Colony, Village of Manans, and the city of Waterville. I could get reelected or somebody else gets elected. Exactly who are they working for? Because again, very different needs. And that creates a contentious situation. And I'm deeply disappointed that that would happen. That being said, you know, I understand you're looking at numbers, but I don't think you're looking at communities. And I understand that you have a set of laws to look at, but I grew up on Dove Street in what is called Center Square. It's really part of Arbor Hill, 29 Dove Street, you know, block in from the former Harmonis Bleecker Library. And I could draw you a circle around Center Square. I could draw you a circle around the South End. I could draw you the North End. I could, you know, the same with Manans and what, you know, I can show you these communities. And unfortunately, what happens is when communities are divided, they don't get the representation that they want. They get the representation they have to have. And I thank you for the time. And I appreciate that you have taken my comments into consideration. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for legislator Van Lane? Okay. Thank you very much. Did Richard Conti get back online? Apparently not. Mary O'Toole had asked to make comments.
Hello and good evening. First of all, I'd like to apologize for my appearance of a wet dog, but I ended up doing a little bit more walking in the rain than originally planned. Hello, my name is Mary O'Toole. Everyone calls me Molly. I'm 18 years old and I live in Albany. I've lived here my whole life. So I work right here at 112 State Street on the 7th floor as an intern. And I just had a few questions that I would really appreciate if any members of the committee or the MMB subcommittee would like to speak on. So my first question is relative to the definition used of minority throughout the process. It seemed that there was a little bit of confusion on that. And it seemed that there was also a little bit of confusion about the data relevant to Hispanic and other minorities that live within Albany and how their voting data was affecting the process. And I wanted to know if there was anything in the future for future people who are doing this that you would change, and if so, what and how? And secondly, I am a rising freshman at UAlbany. So once you released the interactive map, great job, by the way, it looks great. I immediately looked over to it because, you know, I was curious. And you have 2 districts there, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with them. I was just hoping you could speak to the difficulties faced when dealing with a large campus such as that, with such a rapidly changing population, and how that affected your decisions. Thank you.
I can speak to the first part of your question. So in defining minority, we looked at Blacks, we looked at Hispanics, we looked at other groups of minorities across the county. In creating a majority minority district, Blacks are the only population that are concentrated enough in any areas to really constitute a majority district. But with that, we also know that Blacks are closely aligned with Hispanics, so we greatly considered Hispanics, and we know that when there are communities where Blacks and Hispanics are together, the likelihood of minorities being able to choose a candidate of their choice increases. We looked to see if there were any other minority groups that had increased enough in population to be able to constitute districts onto themselves, and found that not to be the case right now. But it is clear that Albany County is continuing to become more and more diverse. We expect that trend to continue. I mean, in terms of view Albany in those districts,
I can speak briefly. I can speak briefly to your second question, which was with regard to the University of Albany. The University of Albany actually exists both in the town of Guilderland and the city of Albany, portions of it. The district line is in fact the municipal line of Guilderland, city of Albany, and that line is the existing line in that district. So it was simply a continuation of what now exists. My understanding is that Richard Conti is back with us.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. There was a brief power loss and I was knocked off. So some things we can't control. And just to pick up, there was just one other point that I really did want to touch on. I think I touched on the issues with the Lark Street bid, coterminous districts, et cetera, and how I think those were important considerations. But there is just one other area in terms of community interest that I'd like to touch on. And so as an added observation from someone who's been pretty involved in city politics since 1986, our four neighborhoods, Center Square, Hudson Park, Park South, Washington Park, basically, have been the heart of the progressive politics in the city of Albany. That challenged the existing political orders and opened new opportunities for civic involvement and responsive government. We have also and continue to be the home of a large LGBTQ plus voting population that made those past victories possible and has been able to amplify the voice of the LGBT community in our local political system. This plan dilutes the political voice of the LGBTQ community. I don't know if that is intentional, but that is the impact of the proposal in how it divides the existing 5th legislative district. This comes at a time when the LGBT community is facing new challenges nationally and even locally. You'll recall a former county legislator who made homophobic remarks, et cetera. And we need to have a strong political voice. The plan that you're considering and how it treats the LGBT community just sends the wrong message. And frankly, I'm just astonished that a plan to dilute the LGBT community's political voice is even being put forward. After all, we're not Florida or Texas. And I don't lightly raise this issue, but it is really significant, especially in the times we are right now. And if you do dilute our voice, you are sending a message. And I will note, I believe you also received written comments from the executive director of the Pride Center, which also echoes the concerns that I'm expressing tonight. A prior map contained in an earlier redistricting draft essentially maintained the 5th district as currently constituted with adjustments for population shifts, et cetera. I don't think there's a reason why you can't continue with that proposal and incorporate that into your final plan. And in considering your final map, so I'd urge you to keep in mind the value of continuity in terms of representation, maintaining communities of interest, and the impact on the political voice of the LGBT community, which this plan would seriously dilute. Please reject the proposal to dismantle the 5th legislative district as currently constituted and adopt a plan which essentially maintains the existing boundaries with adjustments necessary to reflect population shifts and which does not dilute the political voice of the LGBTQ community. And I just, again, if there's one factor, I mean, these neighborhoods have always worked together and have shared representation and are a very strong community of interest. But if there's one thing that really jumped out to me with this, and looking at it in my experience as a gay and lesbian activist going back to 1986 and being very involved in a lot of the progress that we've made and serving on the council for a long time, one thing that jumped out to me is the impact it does have on our community, of the LGBTQ community, and how it takes an area where we have a strong political voice that's a factor in terms of representation in this district, and how it just shatters it and spreads it into 4 different areas and seriously dilutes it. So please don't do that. Don't send the message that you would be sending. If you do that, that's not what our community needs right now. And I really urge you to reconsider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Conti? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Did Legislator William Clay join us by any chance? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the commission? Yes, sir. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. I first want to thank you publicly. I have sat in your seats twice over the last 30 years. And when I say twice, not 2 times, I was on the commission twice.
Identify yourself.
I was going to get to that. I'm Sean Ward. I'm a legislator from the 16th Legislative District, and I represent maybe the most diverse district in Albany County. I represent all of Green Island, parts of Cohoes, Maplewood, Colony, and presently the city of Waterloo. And as was mentioned before, maybe the most diverse district or one of the most diverse districts around. I have no objection at all. And in fact, the first draft that was put out, I said, you know, I probably would have drawn a couple of lines here and there, a little different, but it was almost perfect. And I had no objection to it because it kept all the communities of interest together. And that's something that when I was sitting on the commission, you know, I didn't get involved in talking to people about the political part of it or anything but the communities of interest. And what I'm concerned about in the 16th Legislative District is the fact that the city of Waterloo, which is one of only 3 cities in the county, and is also one of the growing diverse cities or even municipalities in the county, and has not lost any population at all, lost a representative with the new, just recently drafted plan. And the problem with that, in the first draft, and I represent the north end of Waterloo, and in the first draft, I lost a few blocks. And I said, well, you didn't take away the neighborhoods of interest, so I can live with that. But what happened in the draft that was just recently released is that there is a strong population. When I talk about diversity, it's many ethnic groups, not just Black, Hispanic, or white. There is a large Ukrainian population in Waterloo. And in Maplewood, there is a large Russian population. And overseas, they may be at war, but here they are united as one, and they're all praying for peace right now. And that has been never so evident. If you go, Waterloo has had some beautiful ceremonies where they all join together and they pray for peace. And what happened in the recent draft was that the 23rd Street to the Waterloo city line was taken out of that district, taken out of the 16th legislative district. And, you know, that's a group, when you talk about communities of interest, you know, that's a group, they belong with the Maplewood people, and they most, for as long, maybe not the first time, but for the last 20, 25 years, they have been together. There was a couple of other, and these are minor issues too, but they do mean a lot as far as communities of interest. There was a small sliver taken out of the east side of Bout Road from near the Waterloo city line, and this was just in the last draft that this happened. And I'm assuming there was no ill intent. I'm sure it was a numbers game, as I know it happens. But there is a small sliver. There's some houses that really go with the Maplewood people. They're members of the Maplewood Fire Department. They were in the Maplewood School District when it existed. And it's from the Waterloo city line to Elm Street. And it's really just a small sliver between Bout Road and Crabapple that are associated with Maplewood. And the other issue, it's not so much an issue, but there is an area that was added. In the first draft, there was a couple of streets added on the west side of Bout Road that are really, and I hate to use it, they're really North Colony, old North Colony folks. The houses are probably built in the 50s. And these are people that generations went to Shaker High School, and they still do. And what happened is in the newest draft, that was expanded greatly to include a lot more of that area. And it's really, and what happened was when alternate 7 was built, it kind of dissected the Latham Ridge neighborhood, but that neighborhood there was always Latham Ridge. And again, politically, I have no problem with the districts as they are, but we're looking at neighborhoods now. And I was just, and I think they could be corrected mathematically. And when I look at the deviations in my district, I'm plus 1%, and 19 and 20, which are the adjacent districts to the west side of me, are minus 1.1% and minus 1.3%. So I would just ask for consideration. And again, it's not a political consideration. It's totally for neighborhoods, continuity of the neighborhoods up there. And I know what people have said to me, well, what's the difference between that development and the ones across the street? And there is new developments, a lot of new developments on the east side of Bout Road. And what has happened there is they have become communities of a huge Asian, Indian, and Pakistani population, which is great. In fact, my district, I believe, if I read the census numbers right, including Green Island, the Asian population grew dramatically, which is great. Diversity is great in the district, and I'm proud to represent a very diverse district. But I really am concerned about the neighborhoods of interest. I really am concerned about Waterloo losing a representative. They are an urban high needs community. And I'll tell you personally, Mayor Patricelli is very interested in this himself. And there's nobody that calls on his legislators more than Mayor Patricelli. You know, it's at least a 1 or 2 time a week call. So I appreciate the time. I appreciate your efforts, everything you've done, the opportunity for me to speak tonight. And I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Did anyone have any questions?
We are aware of Mayor Patricelli's testimony actually.
Sorry, just for the record. So we are aware of, actually, Charles Patricelli sent in testimony today, which is good. Thank you. Are you aware we also received testimony about the fact from constituents that Board of Elite was split 3 ways? And they felt that it should not be split for the city itself, that it should actually be kept much more intact than split across multiple legislators. What is your thoughts on that?
Well, I really commend what you've done in the middle. One of Elite having an entire district, I think was great, for the process. And I really applaud what you've done for me in the city of Cohoes. It was, I was kind of carved out, kind of funny there, and you fixed that. I have Saratoga Street, which is a like neighborhood to Maplewood and Green Island. In fact, they're in the same Little League district, so it kind of makes sense. But Ward of Elite, I think the biggest issue with Ward of Elite is that northern part of Ward of Elite is very ethnic based, and they do have a strong Ukrainian population that kind of associates with Maplewood, and that is part of what we're talking about here. Plus the fact that they are an urban, high needs city, and I think the leadership of the city wishes to have their representation. And that's what we're talking about here is representation, not anything else.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission or the subcommittee? No one else online? Well, thank you all for attending the hearing, and thank you for engaging with the commission and the subcommittee on the redistricting process. The members of both will consider the comments made tonight, as well as the written comments received as we go back and reconsider the district lines we have drafted. You know your communities better than we do, and we want to do our best to be respectful of those communities, recognizing that we must comply with state, federal, and county law on redistricting. We encourage you to share with us any further comments and thoughts that you may have on the district lines and the process. For the purpose of receiving written public comments, we will consider this hearing to remain open until midnight today. As we consider all of this, as well as any changes to the majority-minority districts that may be recommended, there may be further changes to the proposed district lines. Thank you all very much.